The crystal walls of the great chamber hummed with nervous energy as delegates from across the galaxy shuffled into their seats. Today marked 50 years since the last war ended, and everyone knew what topic would dominate the discussion. Ambassador. Thane's reptilian scales caught the artificial light as he reviewed his notes one final time. His hands trembled slightly. Though he tried to hide it from the other delegates, the Galactic Council had avoided this conversation for decades. Humanity had been content to remain in their corner of space, trading peacefully and keeping to themselves. But their request for formal membership could no longer be ignored. The younger delegates whispered excitedly about finally meeting humans face to face. The older ones sat in uncomfortable silence, remembering things they wished they could forget. Elder. Quinn materialized at the center podium, his energy form flickering with barely contained anxiety. As the oldest member of the council, he had witnessed every major conflict in galactic history. None had left scars like the last war. He raised one glowing appendage, and the chamber fell silent. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Quinn began, his voice echoing strangely through the crystal walls. "We gather today to discuss a membership request from the Terran Federation. Before we proceed, I believe we must review why this decision carries such weight." A massive holographic display activated. Above the assembly, battle footage began playing, showing scenes that made several delegates look away. Burning ships drifted through space while emergency signals filled the communication channels. The proud banners of 6 major empires floated among the wreckage, their colors fading in the cold vacuum. 50 years ago, we learned a lesson that cost us dearly, Quinn continued. We learned what happens when the galaxy underestimates humanity. In the observer section, Captain Rex of the Human Diplomatic Corps sat quietly in his simple gray uniform. Unlike the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor worn by other species, his clothing was plain and practical. Yet his presence seemed to fill the entire chamber. Several delegates found themselves glancing in his direction, then quickly looking away when they met his steady gaze. The holographic display shifted to show pre-war intelligence reports. Humanity's expansion had alarmed the established powers of the galaxy. 12 colonies in 20 years seemed impossibly fast to species that took centuries to terraform a single world. Their technology appeared crude, their military disorganized, their political systems chaotic. Every analysis suggested they would be easy to contain. "The Covenant of Six was formed with noble intentions," Quinn explained, though his voice carried undertones of regret. "We believed we were maintaining galactic stability. We thought we were preventing a dangerous expansion that could threaten established trade routes and territorial boundaries." The footage changed to show the Alliance fleet assembling. Over 300 vessels from 6 different empires, each representing thousands of years of military tradition. The combined firepower could have glassed entire star systems. The strategic planning took months, with each species contributing their specialized knowledge. The Hive Collective provided coordination, the warrior clans brought raw firepower. The Star Republic offered advanced shielding technology. Ambassador Thane finally stood, his voice cutting through the chamber's tense atmosphere. "Many of us were there when the reports came back from New Haven, a single frontier colony defended by 2 frigates and some patrol craft. We expected quick victory, maybe a few hours of fighting at most." The display showed the aftermath of that first battle. 47 Alliance ships destroyed or severely damaged. Thousands of casualties, all to capture one human world that had been defended primarily by civilians. The colonists had fought with mining equipment, improvised explosives, and a determination that defied all psychological profiles. "They fought like cornered animals," whispered Representative Nex of the crystalline hierarchy. Her voice carried a note of wonder even after 5 decades, but that wasn't accurate. Animals fight for survival. Humans fought for something else entirely. The holographic record showed human children serving as message runners between resistance cells. Teachers had become snipers, using their knowledge of local terrain to devastating effect. Farmers turned their agricultural chemicals into weapons. Even when facing certain death, they coordinated their efforts with impossible precision. We realized too late that human disorganization was actually their greatest strength, Quinn admitted. They don't think like us. Where we see chaos, they see flexibility. Where we see weakness, they see opportunity. Captain Rex remained silent throughout the presentation, but his expression never changed. There was no anger or resentment in his eyes, only a quiet sadness. He had lost friends in that war, perhaps family. Yet he sat among former enemies without displaying any hostility. The footage shifted to show Earthfleet's response to the New Haven attack. 200 human warships moving faster than Alliance scouts had thought possible. Their formation looked random to trained military observers, yet they moved with perfect coordination. Each ship seemed to know exactly where its companions would be at any given moment. The Battle of Iron Gate changed everything, continued Quinn. We watched human crews sacrifice their lives to achieve impossible victories. They linked their power cores together, creating weapons that destroyed their own ships in the process. We called it suicide. They called it tactics. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably as the display showed ghost-firing techniques being used across multiple battle zones. Human crews volunteered for missions with zero survival probability, yet somehow their sacrifices always achieved strategic objectives. It was warfare conducted with mathematical precision and complete disregard for individual survival. What frightened us most wasn't their willingness to die, Ambassador Thane added quietly. It was their ability to learn from every encounter. Within weeks of seeing our weapons, they had developed counters. Our advantages became liabilities, our strengths became targets. The final piece of footage showed the surrender at Hegemony Prime, the human fleet surrounding the Alliance's most important world, possessing the firepower to reduce it to ash. Then came Admiral Brooks' simple demand: unconditional surrender and reparations for New Haven. Nothing more. They could have enslaved us all, Quinn said, his energy form dimming with remembered fear. They had the power to reshape the galaxy, according to their vision. Instead, they withdrew to their original borders and asked only to be left in peace. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't wanted conquest or domination. They had simply wanted the right to exist and expand without interference. The Alliance had attacked them for that desire and paid a price that still echoed through galactic politics. Captain Rex finally stood, his movement causing a ripple of tension through the assembly. When he spoke, his voice was calm and measured. The Terran Federation requests observer status in the Galactic Council. We believe it's time our peoples work together for mutual prosperity. The vote was unanimous, though everyone present understood the real situation. Humanity wasn't asking for permission to join the galactic community. They were announcing their intention to reshape it through cooperation rather than conquest. The question wasn't whether they should be granted membership, but whether the galaxy was wise enough to accept their partnership. Elder Quinn's final words resonated through the crystal chamber. Let us remember why we do not wake the sleeping giant, and let us be grateful that when we did, they chose mercy over vengeance. High Chancellor Voss paced across the obsidian floor of his private chambers, each footstep echoing through the crystalline towers that stretched toward the purple sky of the Hegemony homeworld. Intelligence reports covered every surface of his desk, each one painting the same disturbing picture. Humanity had established 12 colonies in just 2 decades, transforming barren worlds into thriving civilizations with impossible speed. The other members of the secret gathering watched him with growing unease. General Krim of the Warrior Clan sat motionless in his ceremonial armor, all 4 arms crossed over his massive chest. His people had conquered dozens of systems through pure military might, yet these humans seemed to expand through methods that defied traditional warfare entirely. Look at these numbers, Voss said, gesturing toward a holographic display that showed human expansion rates. 20 years ago, they were confined to a single star system. Now they control territory that took us centuries to claim. Their population growth alone threatens to overwhelm established trade routes. Admiral Dex of the Star Republic leaned forward, her silver skin reflecting the chamber's artificial lighting. Her people prided themselves on technological superiority and careful strategic planning. The human approach seemed chaotic by comparison, yet somehow achieved better results than any organized expansion she had witnessed. Our intelligence suggests they lack proper military doctrine, she offered, hoping to find some weakness in the data. Their ships appear to be designed by competing corporations rather than unified command. Each colony operates with significant autonomy. There's no central authority coordinating their efforts. The Hive Queen Nora's presence filled one corner of the chamber through a dozen of her drone representatives. Her collective consciousness allowed perfect coordination between billions of individuals, making human independence seem like a fatal flaw. When she spoke, all 12 drones moved their mouths in perfect synchronization. Individual thinking creates inefficiency, the drones stated in unison. Humans waste time and resources on internal debates and competing interests. A properly coordinated strike against their command structure would leave them helpless to respond effectively. General Krim finally spoke, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. My warriors have studied their military engagements with pirates and raiders. They rely heavily on kinetic weapons and projectile systems. Their ships are bulky and slow compared to our designs. Their tactics appear random and unpredictable, which suggests poor training rather than strategic innovation. High Chancellor. Voss nodded, though something in the reports continued to trouble him. Human colonies had consistently repelled attacks by pirate fleets that should have overwhelmed their defenses. Their merchants traveled dangerous trade routes with minimal escort, yet suffered fewer losses than heavily protected convoys from other species. Perhaps their unpredictability is intentional, suggested Elder Zeth of the Crystalline Hierarchy. Her people had mastered the art of psychological warfare through centuries of careful study. Random tactics can be effective against opponents who expect logical responses. But against coordinated forces using proven strategies, chaos becomes vulnerability. The final member of the gathering remained silent until directly addressed. Commander Flux of the Energy Collective existed as pure consciousness, able to observe and analyze without emotional interference. His assessment would carry significant weight with the others. Human expansion follows no recognizable pattern. From our databases, Flux admitted, his voice crackling with electronic undertones, they establish colonies and systems we would consider too dangerous or resource-poor to be worthwhile. Yet somehow they make these worlds profitable within years of settlement. Admiral Dex pulled up additional intelligence reports showing human terraforming techniques. They use methods that should take decades to show results. Our scientists believe they're cutting corners that will lead to long-term environmental problems. Their colonies may appear successful now, but they're built on unstable foundations. General Krim's armor clinked as he shifted position. The warrior clans have a saying, victory belongs to those who strike first and hardest. These humans expand like a plague, consuming resources and territory without regard for established boundaries. Left unchecked, they will eventually threaten every civilized world in the galaxy. The Hive Queen's drones nodded in perfect unison. Collective analysis indicates optimal timing for intervention. Human forces are spread across 12 systems, making concentrated defense impossible. Their individual colonies lack the infrastructure to support extended warfare without supply lines from their homeworld. High Chancellor Voss activated a three-dimensional map showing human space in relation to the 6 major empires. Strategic positions were highlighted in red, showing how human expansion could potentially disrupt established trade networks and territorial agreements. The implications were sobering for any species that valued stability. The question becomes one of proportional response, he said carefully. We cannot appear to be aggressive conquerors attacking innocent colonists. The galactic community would never accept such action, regardless of our stated justifications. Elder Zeth's crystalline form chimed softly as she considered the problem. What if humanity were to reject reasonable demands for territorial limitations? If they were given opportunity to negotiate and chose conflict instead, our response would be seen as defensive rather than offensive. Admiral Dex's silver features brightened with understanding. A joint ultimatum from the six major empires would carry considerable diplomatic weight. We could demand they halt expansion beyond their current borders and submit to galactic oversight of their colonial activities. Their refusal would justify whatever measures became necessary. Commander Flux flickered with agreement. Energy-based analysis suggests humans possess sufficient pride to reject terms they perceive as limiting their sovereignty. Their individual nature makes compromise difficult when dealing with collective demands. The Hive Queen's drone spoke, again in their unsettling unison. Collective assessment indicates 93% probability of human rejection of reasonable territorial limitations. Their expansion pattern suggests internal pressure for continued growth that cannot be satisfied within current boundaries. General Krim's four hands clenched into fists. Then we offer them terms they cannot accept, document their refusal for the galactic record, and proceed with military action. The warrior clans will contribute our finest battle groups. Human technology may be primitive, but their ships will burn like any others. High Chancellor Voss felt a moment of uncertainty. Despite the logical arguments presented by his allies, something about humanity's success rate in hostile environments suggested capabilities that weren't reflected in their apparent technological limitations. But the combined might of six major empires represented overwhelming force that no single species could resist. The Covenant of Six will be our response to human expansion, he declared, activating the formal documentation protocols. Each empire contributes specialized forces according to their strengths. The hegemony provides command structure and logistical support. Admiral Dex's Star Republic contributes advanced defensive systems. General Krim's warrior clans supply assault vessels and ground forces. The treaty took shape as each representative added their species' commitments. The crystalline hierarchy would provide electronic warfare capabilities. The Energy Collective offered surveillance and reconnaissance assets. The Hive Queen's forces would handle coordination and communication across the combined fleets. Over 300 vessels representing the finest military traditions in the galaxy, Admiral Dex said with satisfaction. Human colonies defended by patrol craft and civilian militia cannot possibly withstand such overwhelming force. Commander Flux calculated probable casualty rates and resource expenditure. Estimated completion time for military objectives. Standard months. Expected alliance losses, minimal. Human resistance capability after loss of 3 core colonies, effectively 0. The formal signing ceremony was conducted with appropriate solemnity. Each representative placed their species seal on the covenant documents, creating binding agreements that would commit their civilizations to joint military action. The galaxy's most powerful empires had united against a common threat to established order. General Krim raised his ceremonial weapon in salute. The warrior clans pledge honor and victory to this alliance. Human expansion ends with their next colony attempt. As the gathering dispersed, none of the representatives noticed the small observation drone that had recorded their entire meeting. Human intelligence networks were more extensive than any of them had suspected, and word of the Covenant of Six was already traveling toward Earth. Through encrypted channels, the alliance had been formed with the best intentions and careful strategic planning. They had assessed human capabilities, identified weaknesses, and developed overwhelming force to address a perceived threat to galactic stability. Every analysis suggested quick victory with minimal casualties on their side. They had no way of knowing they had just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of New Haven as governor. Wells finished his coffee and prepared for another routine day of colonial administration. 8 years had transformed this barren rock into a thriving agricultural world, complete with 3 major cities and over 2 million settlers. The achievement represented everything humanity could accomplish when left in peace to build and grow. His secretary knocked on the office door with unusual urgency. "Governor, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's addressed to you personally, but the signal is coming from outside the system." Wells frowned as he accepted the datapad containing the decoded message. No ships were scheduled to arrive for another 3 weeks, and merchant vessels rarely bothered with formal communications protocols. As he read the contents, his confusion turned to disbelief. Then anger. The ultimatum was signed by representatives of 6 major galactic empires, species that humanity had never encountered directly. Their demands were simple and devastating. All human expansion beyond the Sol system must cease immediately. Existing colonies must submit to galactic oversight, and any violation of these terms would result in corrective military action. "Get me Commander Stone on the defense platform," Wells ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. "And send an emergency transmission to Earth Fleet Command. Use the Quantum Relay Network, Priority Alpha." The HMS Defiance hung in orbit above New Haven like a protective guardian, her hull scarred from countless encounters with pirates and raiders. She was one of only 2 frigates assigned to colonial defense, supported by a handful of patrol craft and mining vessels converted for military use. Against the force described in the ultimatum, they might as well have been armed with slingshots. Commander Stone materialized on the governor's communication screen, his weathered face reflecting decades of frontier service. Behind him, the bridge. Crew worked with quiet efficiency, already preparing for the worst-case scenario that every colonial defender dreaded. "Sir, long-range sensors are picking up hyperspace signatures at the system edge," Stone reported. "Initial count suggests over 300 vessels of unknown configuration. They're maintaining formation but haven't made any aggressive moves yet." Wells activated the emergency broadcast system that would reach every settlement on New Haven within minutes. His voice carried across farms and factories, schools and medical centers, reaching people who had never expected to face military action in their peaceful colonial lives. "Citizens of New Haven, this is Governor Wells. Our system is currently being approached by a large fleet representing several alien empires. They have issued demands that we cannot and will not accept. All civilians should proceed immediately to designated emergency shelters. This is not a drill." The response was immediate and impressive. Families gathered their essential belongings and moved toward reinforced underground facilities that had been built for meteor strikes and natural disasters. Teachers led their students in organized evacuations while medical personnel prepared trauma centers for potential casualties, but not everyone headed for the shelters. Tom Brady, a former Earth Marine who had retired to farm on New Haven, retrieved his service weapon from storage and began organizing his neighbors into defensive units. Lisa Wong, a mining engineer, started converting industrial explosives into improvised weapons. David Kim, who taught high school chemistry, began mixing compounds that weren't found in any textbook. Commander Stone watched the alien fleet emerge from hyperspace with professional detachment. The ships were beautiful in their deadly variety, representing design philosophy from 6 different species. Some gleamed like silver daggers, others pulsed with organic curves, still others seemed to be constructed from living crystal. "All vessels, unknown fleet," Stone transmitted on standard frequencies. "You are entering the New Haven system without permission. State your intentions and prepare to receive our diplomatic representative." The response came in perfect standard English, which somehow made it more unsettling. "Colonial Defense Forces of New Haven, you have been given our terms. Surrender your vessels and submit to occupation forces or face the consequences of your government's refusal to accept reasonable limitations." Stone's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Surrender to who? I don't recall voting for any of you in our last election. You want New Haven, you'll have to take it the hard way." The first alien vessels to enter the atmosphere were sleek reconnaissance craft that moved with impossible grace. They swept over major population centers, broadcasting demands for immediate surrender while mapping defensive positions. What they found surprised their commanders and worried their tactical analysts. The humans weren't cowering in their shelters as expected. Instead, they were setting up firing positions, preparing ambush sites, and coordinating resistance efforts, using communication equipment that shouldn't have been available to civilian colonists. Every farm and factory seemed to have become a miniature fortress overnight. The main assault began at dawn the next day. Alien drop ships descended on the three major cities while orbital bombardment eliminated obvious military targets. The HMS Defiance and her companion frigate lasted exactly 17 minutes against overwhelming firepower, their crews fighting to the end, while screaming defiance over open channels, but destroying the official military presence only marked the beginning of the aliens' problems. The human colonists fought with a determination that defied every psychological profile in their databases. Teachers became snipers, using their knowledge of local geography to devastating effect. Students served as communication runners between resistance cells that seemed to coordinate perfectly despite having no central command structure. Private Miller had been a grocery store manager before the invasion. Now he lay in a sniper's nest, constructed from farming equipment, picking off alien officers with a hunting rifle while his wife coordinated evacuation routes for wounded civilians. His 12-year-old daughter ran messages between defensive positions, memorizing complex tactical information that would have challenged trained military personnel. The warrior clan ground forces expected to face scattered resistance that would collapse once their command structure was eliminated. Instead, they encountered organized opposition that seemed to grow stronger as the fighting continued. Every building became a fortress, every street a killing ground, every civilian a potential threat. General Krim's assault troops found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow established rules of warfare. Humans used their own dead as improvised explosive devices. They poisoned water supplies, then attacked medical personnel who tried to treat the resulting casualties. Children threw acid bombs while elderly citizens operated improvised artillery pieces constructed from farming machinery. The Hive Queen's coordination specialists reported something that should have been impossible. Despite having no apparent communication network, the human resistance cells moved with perfect timing. When one group was destroyed, neighboring units immediately adjusted their tactics to compensate. They seemed to think collectively while maintaining individual initiative. Admiral Dex's advanced scanning equipment detected human defensive positions throughout the colony, but somehow missed the ambush sites that consistently destroyed her ground patrols. The humans were using camouflage techniques that fooled sensors designed to penetrate any known stealth technology. On the fifth day of fighting, the aliens achieved their objective by capturing the colonial capital and eliminating organized resistance. The cost had been devastating. 47 ships destroyed or severely damaged, thousands of casualties among elite forces, and the loss of irreplaceable equipment and personnel. But as the Alliance commanders celebrated their victory, long-range sensors detected new hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Earth fleet had received New Haven's distress signal and responded with overwhelming force. 200 human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charging for combat. Admiral Brooks of Earth Fleet opened communications with a message that chilled every alien commander to their core. Alliance forces occupying New Haven system, you have exactly 1 hour to evacuate all personnel and vessels. Any hostile units remaining after that deadline will be destroyed without further warning. The aliens had won their first battle against humanity, but the war was just beginning. And something in Admiral Brooks' voice suggested that humanity's response would be very different from the desperate colonial defense they had just overcome. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. Admiral Brooks stared at the tactical display showing the burnt remains of New Haven colony while his staff waited in tense silence around the conference table aboard the flagship Determination. The reports from the surface made for grim reading. 12,000 civilian casualties, 3 cities reduced to rubble, and evidence of war crimes that violated every civilized standard of conduct. The emergency session of the United Earth Council had lasted 18 hours, but the final vote was unanimous across every faction and nation. Corporate executives who normally competed ruthlessly for market share were sharing proprietary technology. Military officers from opposing alliances were coordinating joint operations. Research scientists were releasing weapons designs that had been classified beyond top secret. "Show me our current fleet dispositions," Brooks ordered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority that came with unified command of humanity's military forces. For the first time in their history, every human government had surrendered. Sovereign control to a single military leader, the holographic display expanded to show human space in unprecedented detail. Industrial worlds that had never built warships were now producing vessels at rates that seemed impossible. Mining colonies were converting their extraction equipment into weapons of mass destruction. Even agricultural worlds were contributing, sending supplies and personnel to support the war effort. "Sir, we have confirmation from the Titan shipyards," reported Captain Nash, Brooks' intelligence officer. "They've retooled completely for military production. Current output is 47 vessels per week, with projected increases as new facilities come online." Brooks nodded grimly. The corporate council had committed their entire industrial capacity to the war effort, suspending normal business operations across hundreds of worlds. Profit margins and quarterly reports had become meaningless when faced with an existential threat to human civilization. "What about the research projects?" he asked, though part of him dreaded the answer. Humanity's scientific community had been working on theoretical weapons that no sane government would normally authorize for development. Dr. Patricia Hayes materialized via hologram from the secure research facility on Europa. Her normally calm demeanor showed signs of strain as she delivered her report. "Admiral, we've successfully weaponized the quantum entanglement project. Field tests show we can link ship power cores across vast distances, effectively creating a single massive weapon system from multiple vessels." The implications were staggering. Human ships could combine their firepower in ways that would overwhelm any defensive system, but at the cost of destroying the vessels involved in the process. It was warfare conducted with mathematical precision and complete disregard for individual survival. "Casualty projections?" Brooks asked quietly. 100% for participating crews," Hayes admitted. "But the tactical advantages could end battles before they truly begin. A squadron of frigates could generate firepower equivalent to a dreadnought-class vessel." Around the conference table, junior officers exchanged glances that mixed excitement with horror. They were discussing tactics that would require volunteers for suicide missions. Yet somehow the concept didn't seem to disturb their commanding officers. The communication system activated with an incoming message from the Alliance fleet. The still occupied New Haven, High Chancellor Voss appeared on the main screen, his alien features showing strain from the unexpected resistance his forces had encountered. "Admiral Brooks, I propose we negotiate terms for the peaceful resolution of this conflict." Voss began, his diplomatic training evident despite the circumstances. "The Galactic Council wishes to establish reasonable boundaries for human expansion. That will prevent future conflicts." Brooks' response was immediate and uncompromising. "Chancellor, the time for negotiation ended when your forces attacked civilian colonies. We offered to discuss territorial arrangements through diplomatic channels. You chose military action instead." The alien leader's crystalline features showed genuine surprise. "Surely you understand that unlimited expansion threatens established galactic stability. Reasonable beings can find compromise solutions without resorting to devastating warfare." "You're absolutely right," Brooks agreed, his tone remaining conversational. "Reasonable beings would have talked first and fought only as a last resort. Unfortunately for you, attacking our children tends to make us somewhat unreasonable." Captain Nash activated the tactical display showing Alliance fleet positions throughout human space. The aliens had established blockades around 6 colonial systems, clearly intending to strangle human expansion through economic pressure rather than direct military confrontation. "Sir, we're receiving reports from all affected systems," Nash continued. The aliens seemed to be avoiding major population centers, probably hoping to force surrender through siege tactics rather than occupation. Brooks smiled coldly. The Alliance commanders still didn't understand what they had awakened. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers, but their ability to turn any disadvantage into a tactical opportunity. "Activate Operation Prometheus," he ordered. "All fleet units are authorized to use enhanced coordination protocols. Make sure the crews understand the commitment involved." Throughout human space, the response was immediate and terrifying. Ships that had been designed for individual operation began linking their systems in ways that their builders had never intended. Crews volunteered for missions with zero survival probability, yet somehow their sacrifices always achieved strategic objectives. The Battle of Iron Gate became legendary within hours of its completion. Captain Lang found his squadron facing a warrior clan dreadnought that outgunned his entire force by a factor of 10. Instead of retreating or attempting conventional tactics, he ordered his 6 frigates to link their power cores and fire as a single weapon. The resulting energy beam punched through the alien vessel's shields, armor, and superstructure in a single, catastrophic burst. The dreadnought broke apart in a chain reaction of secondary explosions that lit up the system like a miniature star. Lang's squadron was completely destroyed in the process, but their sacrifice eliminated the flagship of the enemy's most elite battle group within days. Ghost firing became standard doctrine across Earthfleet. Human commanders treated their own mortality as just another tactical resource, calculating casualty rates with the same precision they used for ammunition expenditure and fuel consumption. The Alliance forces found themselves fighting an enemy that operated according to incomprehensible principles. Humans would sacrifice entire squadrons to achieve minimal tactical advantages. Yet somehow these Pyrrhic victories accumulated into strategic dominance. General Krim's warrior culture, built on individual honor and personal combat achievement, couldn't process an enemy that fought like a collective organism. Each human seemed willing to die to ensure their species' survival, yet they maintained individual initiative and tactical flexibility that no hive mind could match. The luminous collective's energy beings watched in horror as humans demonstrated their ability to weaponize death itself. Crews would deliberately overload their reactors to create suicide weapons, timing the explosions to maximize damage to enemy formations. Admiral Dex's careful strategic planning became worthless when facing opponents who viewed their own ships as expendable ammunition. Her defensive formations were designed to repel conventional attacks, not waves of coordinated suicide runs that treated casualties as acceptable losses. The turning point came when humanity's industrial worlds revealed their true capabilities. Planets that the aliens had dismissed as too distant to matter began producing weapons designed specifically to counter each species' advantages. Ships appeared with frequency disruptors that destabilized energy beings, quantum scramblers that disrupted hive mind communications, and adaptive armor that neutralized crystalline cutting beams. "They're learning from every encounter," Admiral Dex reported to the Emergency Alliance Council meeting. "Within weeks of facing our weapons, they've developed effective countermeasures. Our technological advantages are becoming liabilities." High Chancellor Voss studied casualty reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture. How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated that humans lacked the industrial capacity for sustained warfare. Commander Flux flickered with uncertainty as he processed data that contradicted every strategic assumption. Energy analysis suggests they have converted their entire civilization to military production. Civilian industries, academic institutions, even entertainment sectors are now contributing directly to their war effort. The Hive Queen's drones reported the most disturbing development of all. Collective assessment indicates human coordination efficiency exceeds our own capabilities. They appear to function as a unified organism while maintaining individual creativity and initiative. The Alliance had expected to face scattered human colonies that would surrender when cut off from Earth support. Instead, they discovered that every human world had become a fortress, every civilian a potential soldier, and every defeat a lesson that made the next battle more difficult. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted decisively. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory, and their definition of acceptable losses terrified every alien commander who witnessed The crystalline spires of Hegemony Prime cast twisted shadows across the capital city as High Chancellor Voss watched the human fleet take position around his homeworld. 300 Earth vessels hung in perfect formation, their weapons trained on population centers that house billions of innocent civilians. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity now possessed the power to inflict the same devastation his alliance had planned for Earth. In the command center deep beneath the planetary surface, alliance leaders gathered for what everyone knew would be their final strategic meeting. The war that was supposed to last 6 months had dragged on for 3 years, consuming resources and lives at a rate that threatened the economic stability of entire star systems. Admiral Dex's silver features showed the strain of countless defeats as she delivered her final report. Our remaining forces are scattered across 14 systems with no hope of mutual support. Human technological advancement has accelerated beyond our ability to counter. They're now using weapons that didn't exist in their arsenal 2 years ago. General Krim's 4 arms hung limply at his sides, his ceremonial armor dented and scorched from the battles that had decimated his warrior clans. My people have fought honorably, but honor means nothing against enemies who treat death as a tactical resource. They sacrifice entire fleets to achieve strategic objectives that should require minimal losses. The Hive Queen's drone representatives look smaller somehow, their perfect synchronization replaced by subtle delays that indicated massive casualties among the collective consciousness. Hive analysis indicates total military defeat within 6 standard months. Human industrial capacity now exceeds our combined production by a factor of 12. Commander Flux flickered weakly, his energy form dimmed by the psychological trauma of witnessing his species' energy manipulation techniques turned against them. Human adaptation rate suggests they have incorporated advantages from every species they've encountered. They now possess hive coordination, warrior honor codes, crystalline engineering, and energy manipulation capabilities. Elder Zeth of the crystalline hierarchy remained silent. Her form fractured in several places where human frequency weapons had damaged her molecular structure during the Battle of Sapphire Gate. The humans had learned to shatter her people's crystalline biology with sound waves, turning their greatest strength into fatal vulnerability. High Chancellor Voss activated the planetary communication system with trembling hands. The message he was about to broadcast would be heard throughout the galaxy, marking the end of the alliance that had once seemed invincible. His voice carried across every world of the hegemony, reaching citizens who had never imagined their mighty empire could face defeat. People of the galaxy, this is High Chancellor Voss of the hegemony. After careful consideration of our strategic position, the Covenant of Six hereby offers unconditional surrender to the Terran Federation. We accept full responsibility for initiating hostilities and agree to whatever terms Admiral Brooks deems appropriate. The response came within minutes, broadcast on frequencies that reached every inhabited world in known space. Admiral Brooks appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, his human features showing the weariness of 3 years of devastating warfare. When he spoke, his words carried implications that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. Hi. Chancellor Voss, the Terran Federation accepts your surrender with the following conditions. All Alliance military forces will withdraw immediately to their pre-war boundaries. Reparations will be paid for the destruction of New Haven and other civilian targets. War criminals responsible for attacks on non-combatants will be surrendered for trial under galactic law. The aliens waited for the demands that would crush their civilizations and reduce their worlds to vassal states. Instead, Admiral Brooks continued with terms that shocked every listener throughout the galaxy. Beyond these requirements, the Terran Federation has no territorial demands. We will return to our original borders and resume peaceful expansion, according to established galactic protocols. Any species that wishes to establish diplomatic relations will be welcomed as equals. In the Hegemony Command Center, the silence stretched for long minutes as the implications sank in. Commander Flux was the first to speak, his energy form brightening with confused hope. They're not demanding our subjugation? They could have enslaved our entire civilizations, but they're choosing to withdraw. Admiral Dex's silver features reflected genuine bewilderment. This makes no strategic sense. They possess overwhelming military superiority and could dictate terms that would guarantee human dominance for centuries. Why are they limiting their demands to simple reparations? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Rex of the Human Diplomatic Corps materialized via hologram in the Alliance Command Center, his presence causing several officers to reach instinctively for weapons that would be useless against a projected image. Because we never wanted to conquer anyone, Rex explained calmly. We wanted to be left alone to build our colonies and live our lives in peace. You attacked us for that desire, and we responded appropriately. Now that you understand the consequences of aggression against humanity, we hope we can coexist as civilized neighbors. Elder Zeth's fractured form chimed softly as she processed this revelation. You're saying that 3 years of devastating warfare could have been avoided if we had simply ignored human expansion? Completely, Rex confirmed. We had no interest in challenging established empires or disrupting galactic politics. We just wanted the same rights to expansion and self-determination that every other species enjoys. The years that followed the surrender became known as the Great Rebalancing. Human technology spread throughout the galaxy through trade agreements rather than conquest. Species that had fought desperately against humanity now competed for the privilege of establishing diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation. The corporate Council's industrial techniques revolutionized manufacturing across dozens of worlds. Human agricultural methods transformed barren planets into garden worlds. Most importantly, humanity's gift for adaptation and innovation became available to any species willing to learn. But beneath the cooperation and mutual prosperity, every alien government maintained military analysts who studied the records of the last war. They searched for weaknesses in humanity's armor, tactical vulnerabilities that might be exploited. If cooperation ever broke down into conflict, the search was futile. Humanity had demonstrated something far more terrifying than overwhelming firepower or advanced technology. They had shown the galaxy what happened when an entire species united behind a single cause with complete disregard for individual survival. The Galactic Council evolved into the Human Galactic Cooperative, a new form of interstellar governance that balanced human individuality with alien collective consciousness. Trade flourished, technology advanced, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Yet, in the military academies of every major empire, the Battle of Iron Gate was studied as a cautionary tale. Young officers learned about ghost firing techniques and human adaptation rates. They memorized casualty statistics that showed how humanity's willingness to sacrifice everything had overwhelmed forces that should have been invincible. Captain Rex eventually became humanity's first ambassador to the Cooperative Council, where his quiet presence served as a constant reminder of the sleeping giant that preferred peace but could wake at any moment. During tense negotiations, alien diplomats would glance in his direction and remember footage of burning fleets and impossible victories. The humans had kept their word about territorial limitations, expanding only into unclaimed systems and maintaining peaceful relations with all established empires. But their population continued to grow at alarming rates. Their technology advanced with each passing year, and their influence spread through every aspect of galactic civilization. In the archives of the Crystalline Hierarchy, Elder Zeth maintained detailed records of human capabilities that had been revealed during the war. Her analysis painted a disturbing picture of a species that treated warfare as applied science, learning from every encounter and adapting with unprecedented speed. The most frightening aspect of human military doctrine, she wrote in her final report, is not their willingness to die for victory, but their ability to make death itself into a weapon. They fight like they have nothing to lose because they understand that freedom is worth any sacrifice. The report concluded with a warning that echoed through every intelligence agency in known space. Humanity defeated our alliance not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through absolute unity of purpose. They transformed their entire civilization into a weapon system while maintaining the individual creativity that made them adaptable to any challenge. Should humanity ever face an existential threat again, the galaxy will witness destruction on a scale that makes our recent war seem like a minor dispute. We must ensure that such a threat never emerges because humanity has proven they can, and will burn down the galaxy to protect their right to exist. The last war ended with humanity's mercy rather than their victory, but everyone understood the real lesson. The sleeping giant could be awakened by threats to human freedom, and when aroused, it possessed the power to reshape the galaxy according to its vision. The question that haunted every alien leader was simple. How long would humanity choose to remain benevolent rulers of a galaxy they could conquer whenever they wished? The answer, according to Captain Rex, was as long as everyone remembered why no empire dared challenge humanity after the last war. Peace through superior firepower had become peace through superior mercy. But the firepower remained ready for any species foolish enough to test humanity's patience again.